Hello and welcome to the channel and welcome back to Doctor Who Reactions. This is season 12 episode 10. It is the grand finale and it is called The Timeless Children. And I'm about to go on a bit of a ramble discussing predictions and basically all the unresolved stuff that has happened over the last two seasons that I'm hoping will be resolved in this episode. Really should have made this video sooner, but if you'd like to skip straight to the reaction, go to that point there, and there's a timestamp in the description. For everybody else, buckle up. Okay then, as I said, I should have made this video last week before the episode actually aired on British TV. It aired last night. I haven't seen it, obviously. I haven't seen the next time trailer, but I have spent the week writing down notes on unanswered questions from the last couple of seasons and a few notes on how it could possibly be resolved. I don't expect any of this to be actually true, but there you go. I don't think anyone's predictions. I've seen a lot of the predictions and theory videos on YouTube this week, and honestly, there's a lot of logical and sound theories out there, like the Time Lords were originally the humans that Kashamas has been sending through the boundary, and that's the big secret, that Time Lords were originally human. It fits logically, like same as the Ruth Doctor being a doctor in between 2 and 3. It fits. It's the only place it can fit, really, unless we want a pre-Hartnell Ruth Doctor, which nobody wants. But I just feel that there could be other explanations. Let me start with inconsequences. A list of unanswered stuff that probably doesn't relate anything to the Timeless Child or any of this, but yet still are just left hanging and could be something to do with it. I don't know. So let me go back to season 11. In fact, let me go back to Twice Upon a Time. Why did the TARDIS eject the Doctor just after her regeneration? And why did it then disappear for a good part of 2 episodes, only to reappear on an alien planet? What was that all about? Seems odd behaviour for the TARDIS. Who was that guy in Rosa? The guy that seemed to know what a TARDIS was. What is his connection? He kind of made an appearance, said a lot of stuff that he knew about Time Lords and possibly the Time War and TARDISes and things. He knew all about that, but then that was just left hanging. So what was that all about? Who were, or what were, the remnants? And how did they know about the Timeless Child? They were essentially just sentient cloth. Are they more important than the episode first gave them credit for? Move on to season 12. Why has Graham been mistaken for the Doctor so many times this season? We had C mistaken for the Doctor in Spyfall Part 1, and we also had Jack mistake Graham for the Doctor, although he mistook everyone for the Doctor. And then we have this scene.
No, don't worry about it.
You are really strange.
Excuse me, I'm the most normal bloke you're ever going to meet.
And to me, that's not a mistake. That was part of the script. And the reason I say this is because mistakes do happen on TV. A Starbucks coffee cup in the background, but that's the point. It is usually background mistakes. things that aren't necessarily noticed by the continuity people. But this was a script error. But this was a script error that was full screen, only 2 actors in it, crew, director, cameraman, sound guy, none of them noticed that he fluffed his line. Despite the fact that Brad and Julie are both extremely well-seasoned actors, and they'd know that they'd fluffed the line, or that he had fluffed the line. Aside from that, it has to go through editing, screening, compositing, more screening, more editing. And that mistake didn't get picked up once during that whole process. I don't believe that. It has to be deliberate. It has to be deliberate. But what does it mean? Are they saying that Graham is actually the Doctor? That's not possible, is it? What was all that parallel Earth stuff in Spyfall Part 1? How does that relate? And what were the Kasavin? Never really did get a good answer to that one either. Where was that place that Yaz was sent to? The place that looked like she'd been miniaturised into the carpet. But it wasn't the carpet. Because it had electrical signals flowing through it. Where was that place? And what exactly was that spy being genetically turned into? They did say something about her genetics were being rewritten. But into what? Is she the timeless child? And finally, for Spyfall at least, does Barton have any more role to play in this story? I'm not entirely sure why the Master was using him anyway. It seemed a bit random. And why was Barton cooperating with the Kasavin? Seems an odd pairing as well. That's beside the point. What was the signal that Tesla received from Mars? That conversation was a little bit throwaway at the time, but we still have a guy in the early 1900s that is signalling to Mars, so what was that all about? And is that going to be important? Probably not. And these are just questions that I haven't got answers for. Who sent the Siberian back in time for Percy Shelley to find, and for hopefully the lone Cyberman not to find? Obviously the last humans fighting the Cyber Wars sent it back, but from what point in time was it sent back? Who was Ashad before he became a Cyberman? And is that even important? What was that Brendan stuff all about? Now, to me, Brendan's story has to be either real or not real. There's no other choices. If it's real and there really was a little boy called Brendan who was adopted, joined the police force, survived a fall off a cliff, and then was... Yeah, so if it's real, none of it makes sense. It just opens up more questions, like who put Brendan in the middle of the lane to be found? Why is it we never really see anybody else in those flashbacks apart from Brendan, his dad, the sergeant and the criminal and his mum? It's almost as if those 5 people were the only people that existed in that town. How did he survive the fall, let alone the gunshot wound? Why was his father and the police sergeant younger than he was at the end? Unless, of course, that wasn't Brendan's dad and the sergeant, but just things disguised as. In which case, who were they? really? And what did they do to Brendan at the end? Did they, well, they said, and they implied it was a memory wipe. But what else did they take? Did they take everything? They said they were going to take everything, and that implies not just memories, but emotions, personality. Could they have actually regressed him back to a child? Is he on a loop where he lives his life, gets regressed back to a child, gets adopted, and just goes through time that way? Is he the timeless child? I don't know, but I think the whole thing was an analogy. It was the construct of a tortured mind that it wasn't able to handle what was really happening to it, i.e. a human being turned into a Cyberman. We saw it in Asylum of the Daleks with the fragment of Clara, where she constructed this thing where she was hiding from the Daleks and making souffles and all sorts of things, whereas in fact none of it was real. And I think this Brendan stuff is that, essentially, is the same as that. Okay then, more stuff, more questions. The creation of the lone Cyberman. Is that important anymore? Is the lone Cyberman important now? I mean, obviously he is, but is knowing more about him important? I don't think it is. I think we've learned enough about the lone Cyberman to know what he is, and I don't think there's anything more to him than that. But what about Koshamus? Is there any more to him than meets the eye? Is he just some guardian that's been sending people through the boundary, or is he something else? Or someone else? What exactly is the Master's involvement in all this? I feel that the secret of the Timeless Child has to be something monumentally huge for the Master to destroy Gallifrey and presumably everybody on it. The Master is a genocidal, sociopathic psychopath. If the secret of the Timeless Child is that the early Gallifreyans or the early Time Lords did something to some entity, why would the Master care about that? Why would he care about something that happened to somebody else? He's never shown that sort of compassion or empathy before. So it has to be personal, or so huge that he just couldn't contain himself. But I can't think of anything that would be that huge. Even rewriting all of Time Lord history so that it was actually the humans going through the boundary that were the first Time Lords, and the whole Time Lord society is built on the lie that they evolved from humans. I don't see that as changing anything. Time Lord society still evolved, it still existed. Nothing's really changed apart from folk stories, because from Gallifrey's point of view, all this happened millions of years ago. We know from our own history that once you go past a few thousand years, you're in the realm of myth. So millions of years ago, when Rassilon came to power and etc., on all that deep lore, if it's rewritten, again, why would the Master care? It has to be personal, or it's not what we think it is. So if it's not something the Time Lords did to an entity, then maybe the Timeless Child is the entity that did something to the Time Lords. Maybe it's the other way round. But again, I can't think of what it could be. The same goes for the timeless bit of the Timeless Child. What does that mean? Timeless could mean eternal. It could mean immortal. It could mean just not existing in time, or not being affected by time. Is it possible that the Timeless Child has this sort of cyclic immortality? Like I said before, if it's Brendan and the Timeless Child has been going through his life one life at a time, but then regressing back to a childhood and so forth. Kind of immortal, but useless immortality. Could that be it? Could it all be linked to how the Time Lords got their power in the first place? So what do I think? Okay, right, I really want to get into the story now. So I think the Brendan thing was a construct of a human's mind that was undergoing cyber conversion. And I'm thinking not the lone Cyberman. I'm thinking one of the lone Cyberman's buddies. I think that the three, the Sergeant, Brendan's dad and Brendan himself, are the three Cybermen with the rusted and I think that the Sergeant is the lone Cyberman because the Sergeant is the one in charge, and Brendan's dad and Brendan are his two friends, and what we were seeing was a construct of when they were created. I could be wrong there. To wrap it up, what I think is going on is the Timeless Child was a Gallifreyan woman who had such extreme psychic abilities back in the old days when magic existed, had such extreme powers that she was able to place herself outside of the effects of time. And because she was feared, she created Time Lord Society as a puppet society. So Rassilon, Omega, they were all puppets, and every government, every Time Lord High Council, every Time Lord President has been a puppet, because the real power has been this Timeless Child, this ex-Pythia. That's what I think. And that's why the Master was so enraged that the whole of his society were just puppet kings and puppet emperors, that he destroyed Gallifrey, because there was no point to it, because there was no power there. All the power was the Timeless Child. Maybe the Timeless Child has been secretly running the universe. That's stupid. I know that's not the answer, but it's the only one I could think of that doesn't go against deep lore, doesn't go against canon, and yet does explain what's going on. Oh, Ruth Doctor. I've forgotten about the Ruth Doctor. As I said, the most logical place for her to fit would be between 2 and 3 because of the 6B theory. I think she's pre-Hartnell, but I don't think she's just pre-Hartnell. I think she's really pre-Hartnell, like 5 or 6 regeneration cycles prior to Hartnell. Or she's somewhere in between the Peter Cushing Doctor and I don't know. Right, we're going to get on with this now. I've waffled enough. Hello and welcome back to the reaction part of this video, where we will be watching Season 12, Episode 10, The Timeless Children, and we're going to go in 1, 2,